All right.
Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody, for the week of March 29th. I'm Ryan Miller, and...
You're going too slow.
Oh.
We've got a 4-hour movie to talk about. Let's go.
Madame Berg. You're right. This needs to be 40% in slow motion for the movie of the week.
Yeah. Here and there, we do need to slow it down, so maybe this is the right time.
On Book Club for Movies, where we watch usually one movie a week that's under 4.5 hours long and talk to you about it. Should you decide to participate, you can find us at podcast@bookclubformovies.com or Facebook and Twitter, where we will respond in kind.
Kind? Like Richard?
Much like Zack Snyder kind of responded to the theatrical release of a movie called Justice League.
I'd certainly say he responded by just absolutely outright titling it, "No, you have a Justice League, well, this is mine, and here's how you
Zack
know."
Snyder, yep, no, that's fine. I won't take issue with that for the next couple hours.
No umbrage?
A couple hours. I just said the show is going to be a couple hours. It's still going to be close to an hour.
I mean, we're already a couple minutes in, and I think it's going great.
Great. So there's going to be some differences. But let's still start with your synopsis that you write with a pencil.
I have in the past written it with a pencil. This one is just written directly on my phone, so we'll see if I can read it all quickly and effectively.
Did you archive that for when they do the apocalypse?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And by the way, apocalypse ends with LIPS, not LYPSE. It's a whole thing.
Oh, you're right. We're doing a DC thing.
Yeah. Kiss my apocalypse. All right. Zack Snyder's Justice League coming at you 4 hours and 2 minutes. Written by Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio. Directed by Zack Snyder this time. Starring Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, Ray Fisher, Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Jeremy Irons, Connie Nielsen, Diane Lane, Kieran Hines, Ryan Zhang, Joe Morton, Amber Heard, and Ray Porter, with a little minor bit of Willem Dafoe. Here is your Book Club for Movies synopsis for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Thank you.
No Kryptonian, no lantern. With the Amazons and Atlanteans having hid themselves from the eyes of humanity, it's up to the Bat of Gotham and the Princess of Themyscira to bring together a group who can stop Steppenwolf's invasion from the planet Apocalypse and keep the anti-life equation away from their ruler, Darkseid.
Wow, these are getting to the point where I'd call them elevated synopses.
Well, I like to think of us as elevated for sure.
Yeah, it's been around for a while, looked down upon for a very long time, but now that,
In comparison to what? I don't know, but we're better than something.
Elevated.
So, okay.
You. No.
Well, all right.
No, this is definitely your show. You me first, and then also okay you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to before we dive into the movie itself, I wanted to briefly talk about how we kind of got to this point.
Sure. That's the calmest way I've heard that put so far, by the way. How did we get here?
So about a decade ago, Ryan and I met, and
okay.
This is how long.
Has it been that long, though, really?
Yeah, it's been about a decade.
Don't look it up.
Actually,
no,
it's definitely been at least 10 years. Yeah, we've known.
Okay, that's
so
it's fine.
I think everybody is pretty familiar, has some general idea of what went on, but I just want to kind of review it very quickly. I don't think we need to deep dive into any of this, but
no, and that'll tie into my so what for you.
Sure. Okay. So what we ended up with was Zack Snyder basically he had a 5-film idea for his DC universe, and it was Man of Steel, Batman, Superman, and then it was going to be a trilogy of Justice League movies. Batman vs. Superman came out, and it was critically reviled. I mean, the critics hated it. Fans were not a huge fan of it either. It didn't go very far. And the thing about that movie was Warner Brothers had kind of doubled down with the assumption that this movie is going to hit. It's going to do well. So they're going to start filming Justice League just like 3 months after the release of Batman versus Superman. In the time between Batman versus Superman's release and the start of filming, Warner Brothers went back to Zack Snyder and said, this is not going to work. We need to adjust this movie. You're not going to get your trilogy. Let's do one and see what happens. And we need to adjust the flavor of the movie a little bit. So they ended up bringing Chris Terrio back to punch up the script a little bit and do some work on it. And they ended up turning the movie a little bit. And there is, if you watch Batman versus Superman, any cut of it and compare it to this, there is a pretty big jump in where, while they both kind of have that similar Zack Snyder look, they're a little dour, they can be dark. This one definitely has a lighter touch to a lot of it. There's a number of like kind of funny jokes here and there. It's
talking about Justice League?
Yes.
Okay.
Justice League is a lighter movie and lighter in tone overall.
Talking about the Snyder cut of Justice League?
But either cut of Justice League
okay,
in comparison to Batman versus Superman. So,
which, by the way, me and you don't hate.
No, not at all. Actually, and I think the ultimate cut, which I want to also actually touch on here with that movie and this. Again, it's going to be quick, but I want to touch on those director's cuts.
Okay, all right.
So Snyder gets the movie going, films it. It's done. It's in the can in terms of he's got an assembly cut. He's got his version of it.
How long was the assembly cut? I've actually just learned about this, where the assembly cut is basically very minimal editing. It's basically what every client of mine thinks basic, like actual editing is, oh, you just put everything that you have together in a line, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think it ended up being something like 5.5 hours.
Okay.
If not a little bit longer, but.
Right. Funny that assembly cut would be more in the public consciousness at this point.
Especially after actually Alien 3, because Alien 3 was universally considered garbage. They released a literal version of it called Alien 3, The Assembly Cut, which was
did not know that.
Fincher's, well, this is the best I could do, and then they still butchered it and it still didn't come out great.
Huh.
But so he makes the movie, it's about 90% complete, not counting visual effects and everything. And he suffers a tragedy. His daughter kills herself. Autumn, her name was Autumn. There's actually a lovely little note about it in the movie. There's a something.
Snydercut is dedicated to her.
It's dedicated to her, and there's actually also a specific moment in the movie where a suicide prevention billboard is plastered on the screen for a good amount of time. It's given a moment. So he suffers the loss. He realizes that he just can't spend the time on the movie. It's not the thing that's priority for him. So he has to take a leave. They bring in Joss Whedon, well-known script doctor, and Whedon nukes the movie, rewrites 90 plus pages of it, and basically refilms the whole thing. He shot tons of new stuff. Reshoots were crazy huge. Warner Brothers had told him it needs to be 2 hours. It can't be longer than X. It can't be shorter than this, but it's got to be 2 hours. We need a 2-hour movie. So Whedon was brought in to kind of rejigger this whole movie into something that fits into a 2-hour slot. That now that we've seen the Snyder cut, I mean, it was a nightmare beforehand seeing the Whedon cut because it was jumbled from the start. Seeing what existed now makes that an even bigger task. That's like a Herculean task that nobody was going to be up to. I don't care who they gave it to. Nobody could have made that better.
Yeah.
Like it just couldn't have happened.
When was the last time you saw the Whedon cut?
A couple months ago.
Okay. I watched it immediately after the Snyder cut.
I wanted to, and I didn't have the time, and we got caught up in other things. I did watch Batman versus Superman, though, ahead of this, leading into it the day before, actually.
We will just perfectly mesh here. This is going to be great.
No, it'll be good. So the ultimately what we got here with Zack Snyder's cut is there's two sides to this, which are, you ended up with two kind of groups of people, where you had some people that were just keeping a hashtag alive, restore the Snyder cut, what have you. But then you also had the extreme toxic fandom that were badgering people, attacking people online, anything they could do to remind that the Snyder Cut existed. And
that old delineation.
The unfortunate vocal minority in this case specifically.
Sure. Although I will say, maybe before we move too far past that fan stuff, where did you lie with that? Like, okay, sorry, no, that's wrong. I know you obviously weren't on the rabid idiot side of that, but how invested were you in the Snyder Cut? Like, did you?
In the sense that, so we going back to, you and I had watched Justice League, and it was fine. It was not
also
great.
Didn't hate it.
We didn't hate it, but it's impossible. It was impossible to ignore how much we already knew was out there, just based on screenshots and the little clips here and there that Snyder had released over the course of the making of the movie and during his editing time, that I knew there was more. It was a guarantee, even when Snyder refused to acknowledge it. Like he said, he never came out directly and said, "Oh, I've got a full cut." He always said, "I have something, but it's not finished. It's all black and white. It's this on my computer. It's that."
Well, and that's how it all began. Like, something actually existed. It wasn't even an assembly cut, I'm sure. Like, it probably wasn't even a full thing. He just was speaking about the footage he knew existed in
he walked away from this project with everything he shot. He had it, and he had stuff. But it wasn't until, I want to say, Ray Fisher,
Cyborg,
a couple years ago, straight up acknowledged it and said, "I've seen it. I know it's there," which then got Gal Gadot to note it, and then Ben Affleck noted it, and thank you. Then you started having more and more people, including maybe the person who was the most vocal about it outside of Ray Fisher, was actually Ray Porter, who plays Darkseid. He knew it existed too, because one of the things that the Whedon cut completely and utterly removed was every basic mention of and visual of Darkseid.
I want to say there's one, maybe two, where his name is said, but you never see him, you never hear him.
But Porter had filmed stuff, so we knew it was there because he talked about it. He said, "I had a great time. I got to work with Kieran Hines. I got to do this stuff and this, but I can't tell you anything about it because I'm still under NDA." So,
and you're saying, and about this point is when you became maybe invested?
I was never invested in the point in the level of, like, I don't think I ever tweeted anything about it. Like, it was never, I've never hashtagged it.
But you're paying attention to it. It seems like, at the very least.
Anything that has to do with, the DC universe, of course.
Okay, that's true. And that's kind of been, I guess me and you diverge a little bit here. I don't follow too much of that for whatever reason. I don't know. But I guess I ask because as far as the Snyder Cut, like, certainly the rabid people out there, I didn't understand for anything.
I know, I can't understand any of that.
Even just how much got thrown behind the Snyder Cut was a little, not baffling, but I guess just outside of my wheelhouse in a way.
Oh yeah.
But still, just this idea that the Snyder Cut meant so much deeply to so many people was kind of strange, unique at the least.
No, I don't disagree at all. It's, you don't see that kind of rabidness for much of anything. Like when we do, it's almost uniquely negative, right? Like the last big rabid thing I remember that I can think of really off the top of my head is how awful everybody and their brother was to half the cast, most of the females in Star Wars, right? Like, like people lost their minds at Rian Johnson's decisions. And I mean, whether or not you like him or not, what the hell are you doing going after Kelly Marie Tran for nothing? Like, she's in a movie.
And I'm even trying to like divide, like, I don't even want to give those people attention in a way. I'm like excluding them and being like,
yeah, well, you should exclude them.
You should be excluded, but just in the way. And I guess to give an idea of where we both stand, I think. I interrupted what you were actually doing, I think. So
ultimately what we ended up with was we're in a unique time, and for all of the bluster about, release the Snyder Cut and do this and that, I think the main reason this ended up occurring and being successful in terms of a quote unquote lobbying thing from fans is only because of the pandemic. If we don't run into a situation where, well, how much of Hollywood has been shut down for how long. Like they had a huge amount of time where they couldn't make movies. Like nobody could do it. Insurance companies weren't covering them. And so I don't know that this cut ever occurs without something of that like catastrophic nature, because there's nothing for them to produce at the time. They're sitting on like, what can we do? We've got HBO Max coming out. We don't really have a ton to put on it. We need to drive subscribers there. We can't make movies right now. Oh, you know what? Zack Snyder has a cut. People are vocal about it. We can give him a dump truck full of money at $70 million. Go finish your CGI, do what you want. Okay. You want to do 3 days of reshoots. Okay, fine. We can manage that. Go do your reshoots.
And that's where it got strange, I think, because and certainly COVID didn't hurt, but that it turned into reshoots and this. And I guess when you say 70 million, apparently none of that went to him. He did this all for free.
No, he did it.
He says, yeah.
He did it. Yeah. It all went straight to the movie and to crew and actors and stuff. He got nothing out of this, which I think honestly says...
No, that's cool. Yeah,
at the end of the day, I want to say that this is the only thing I really think I need to say about Zack Snyder. I don't know that I agree with a lot of his lifestyle choices, like his worldview and whatnot, but as a person in general, the only thing you ever hear about the guy is that he's like the nicest dude in the world.
Yeah.
And I have to root for that a little bit. You know, I want him to succeed.
For sure.
So getting all of that out of the way. The one thing that I want to mention about Batman versus Superman is with the initial film, that movie it's rough. It's got some bits in it that it jumps around. It doesn't have a lot of continuity. There's a whole bunch of like lapses in logic. The ultimate cut, which makes it a 3 hour and 15 minute movie, I think.
I don't think I was aware that thing existed.
Maybe
crazy.
It's maybe shorter. Maybe it's 3 hours and 4 minutes, something like that. But it's about 3 hours long as opposed to the 2 hour 20 minute, I think, or 2 hour 30 minute.
And you would prefer that over the theatrical?
So the reason I bring it up is because it seems that this is a case where both that movie and the Justice League really benefit from, like, he clearly wrote movies that had plot and they had story and they did have things that tied them together that made sense. And he was forced somewhere along the lines to edit them down and cut stuff. And these two cuts that are so much longer make the movies more cohesive in every respect.
Sure.
And I think that matters. Like, that to me matters. Now, again, whether or not you want to watch those movies for that long, different question altogether. But the Batman versus Superman Ultimate Cut, the longest cut that's out there, I like it a whole heck of a lot more than the other version, than the theatrical.
That might have even been the last one I saw, for all I know. I don't think I knew at the time. I was just like, Batman versus Superman, because I've seen it, I think 2 or 3 times or something like that.
Sure. And I admit, with the Ultimate Cut, I don't remember what was cut out because I have not seen the theatrical cut since the theatrical cut. Like, since that was the only thing available.
I guess I'm not even thinking, because and I think to some extent this is us continuing the conversation we said we'd continue from last show, but also getting into Justice League a little bit maybe,
yes.
or this will be the conversation going on about Justice League. I don't know that length, like, sure, it's more cohesive. Like, it give me all the time in the world and I can explain every last thing about something.
Of course.
But with a movie, where certainly that's the job, that's the process, is you get edited at some point. And I'm not going to say always to good effect, but I myself like to be edited. You know, I like to be given notes at the very least to be like, oh, you know, get more heads. And this is, it depends on who's directing, right? To some extent. Zack Snyder does seem like the kind of dude that can take some notes. But in this situation, and it seems maybe with Batman versus Superman director extended supercut, it's so weird because
it's like he wrote story that he thought nobody can edit this. It's like he made a movie that specifically could not be edited.
Well, it's just that we're in the age where the director is, or people are given. Okay, let's actually talk specifically about Zack Snyder, since this might be the second time he's done this with Justice League Snydercut. Just because you have it, I don't know that it goes in still. And sure. Justice League largely seems like it was just every part of the buffalo. And I think that was the deal from the start. So again, I don't know how much you rail against something for being exactly what it is and was meant to be the whole time. But it does seem like, I got footage about this. Yeah, it's going like nothing ended up on the floor. It seems, which still probably can't be actually true for anything that makes it out in some degree or another. So I think that'll be an interesting question as we get to talking about the movie here. And unless you have anything else, I have my so what for you. I saw your wife. It's too late. I saw her.
Yeah,
she's in the background.
He saw you.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late.
Okay. Were you finished for the most part with your introduction?
Yeah.
Okay. All I want to say about Justice League now from here
Great
going
show!
forward.
Bye!
Yeah. This will be it. I'm sorry. About how I'm going to talk about the Justice League from here on out, because I think you're right. I think this has been in the news. It's COVID. Like, this has probably been seen by a lot. It's got a higher Rotten Tomato score than the original Justice League, than the Whedon cut. All I have are my notes, and I'm probably just going to go through them pretty chronologically.
All right.
I don't know if that works for you.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll work something out, but that's my plan of attack here.
Sure.
Seeing as people know the story, they know the history probably more so behind the movie than others.
No, that's fine. The one thing I want to, I will or not. It's the one thing. I mean, how many of one things have I pointed out already? We'll find
We're gonna
out.
say a lot of the only things I'll say about Justice League is
another thing I do want to point out, and I guess this does dive directly into the movie, kind of.
Okay.
There had been talk at the very beginning of this when Warner Brothers had announced it and said, yes, this is happening, and we know it's going to be about 4 hours. There was talk about it being released as a episodic thing where they were going to kind of do it as a TV show, and then it was no, it's just going to be a full movie. Then it was no, we're going to do it as a two-parter thing where it's going to be two-hour movies. Ultimately, what happens here is, and I actually really love this, and I think it was brilliant.
Agree.
They made it episodic by having these little like pseudo intermissions where you get a title card, and it's titled out to I think 6 quote unquote episodes with including the epilogue.
It might be 7 with the
epilogue. So it might be 7 with the epilogue. I can't remember. But they equal out in time. So it's all kind of about 40. Each one is about 40 minutes, thereabouts. And it's brilliant because he did cut it in spots that make sense to, here we go. We can break it here. So this movie is, for as long as it is, if you are interested in the movie, is extremely digestible without having to do it as a single sit down,
Agree. And I totally like that, actually. We got our start on Tuesday, so we got kind of a late start watching it, and watched one section a day. I think there was one time we didn't get through an entire section, but up until Saturday, and it worked out. It was actually pretty easy. I finished watching the 4.5 hour Snyder cut earlier than I finished watching most movies for the show.
That's terrific news.
Terrific. And I've kind of already mentioned how he appears to have used every part that he has. He's also appeared to have extended those parts just whenever he thought it would look cool, which I think is Snyder's thing. And I don't necessarily hate it. I think it's part of the stuff I actually ended up liking out of Batman vs. Superman were some of the slow-mo things and kind of the, not even like comic booky scenes that he sets up, but the very just perfectly framed and cool looking. The one that from Batman vs. Superman that always sticks out is where he's just like standing up in the Batmobile to Superman looming over,
So cool. It's a great
stuff
shot.
Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you can't say, you can say a lot of things about Zack Snyder. You absolutely cannot say he does not have a great eye for cinematography. The dude does, period.
Yeah, I'm down with that stuff.
Yeah.
Even though strangely enough, overall, I hate his palette. Like, the dude really does hate colors. I don't know.
It's true. Dawn of the Dead is the most colorful movie he has.
And the high contrast stuff, I'm also just super over. But it's besides all that, Justice League has that times a bazillion. Like,
Definitely.
He might have overdone it with the slow-mo.
Oh,
That's
I mean,
maybe.
if you take 90% of the slow-mo out, like there are a bunch of things that are slow-mo. Like it's like Barry's gonna take his wallet out. Batman's writing something down. Aquaman's brushing his hair. It's like
you are barely exaggerating.
If you take any of that stuff out, well, somebody brought this up, and I thought back about it, and I went, yeah, no, that's a good point. That if you don't have a slow-mo every time somebody moves, Connie Nielsen, every time she moves, slow-mo Connie Nielsen. Like, I like Hippolyta as well. I don't need her to be like constantly like, is she moving at all? What is that? Like, is she actually that slow, or did you visually
and I want to say that's mentioning the Amazons. That's because I feel like a lot of that's front loaded. Like I feel like he takes his finger off the button a little bit as the movie goes on towards the end.
Towards the middle and the end, yeah.
But yeah, that first section is so much slow-mo. I'm so tempted. In fact, somebody's probably already done this. This is probably the main reason I wouldn't do it. But to get like an editable copy and go through and like scrub through and put everything back down to what seems like normal speed and see how much time is saved.
It's going to be 30, 40 minutes. Easy.
It's crazy. Anyway, again, just going through my notes chronologically here. Steppenwolf looks better.
Significantly so. Love that change in terms of the cool thing about the outfit change here and the redesign is that he now feels so the entire character of Steppenwolf is connected to the mother boxes that he's coming to Earth to search for. And there was like for no reason whatsoever, the boxes were just the boxes. Steppenwolf was Steppenwolf in the Whedon cut, but the Snyder cut, there is like the visuals. There's a connection to them. They have a similar look and a move to them.
Have you compared the two since?
Oh yeah,
I had no idea.
From the look.
Freaking,
oh yeah, it's huge.
When I first saw it in Snyder Cut, I was like, oh, he looks different. And then when I watched the Whedon Cut afterwards, I was like, whoa! Like in the Whedon Cut, he is like a skinny dude with like a way more human face. It's bizarre.
It's not great.
But yeah, in the Snyder Cut, they made him finally a monster, and they gave his armor the same feel as the mother boxes to a certain extent. So yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And I like that a lot. I thought that was a good change.
And speaking of the mother boxes, boy, do we get to learn a lot more about them. And
as in, you get to learn what they do and the point of them at all?
Well, so the Whedon cut is so hilarious after watching the Snyder cut because the movie's still over 2 hours long. It seems like it is blazing. Like they go into stuff about the mother boxes. They do mention, I think, enough about them, but it's certainly not historical in its sense. It's not everything that you get in the Snyder Cut. It's never going to be. But yeah, in the Snyder Cut, they explain it all. It seems like they don't have any reason not to.
No, well, I mean, again, for this, going back to what I said earlier, it does seem like Snyder wrote himself into a corner on purpose or on accident with how much exposition he wanted to provide, and the way it was done, cutting parts out of it really made the Whedon cut to me from the last time we even watched it, like I said a couple months ago, it's practically incomprehensible. If you don't know what I already know and what you already know, there's a bunch of stuff in there that doesn't make any sense. Like Beth, I'm going to give you a spoiler for both of these. Beth watched them both. When we finished the Snyder cut, she actually said, number one, that was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. And she said, and it made more sense than the other one. I didn't understand any of what was happening in the last movie because there's next to no explanation. It's a bunch of stuff mushed together. Like Cyborg gets no backstory. You get nothing on him. Like in the Whedon cut, that's of value. He's not important. Whereas in the Snyder cut, he is the most important character in this movie. I would argue he's the heart of the movie.
I actually, of everyone, want to see. Well, that's not true because I'm really excited for the next Flash movie. But I think the most is left unsaid about Cyborg that could be an entire movie. Like after the Snyder cut, even the Whedon cut, I'm left missing whatever the Cyborg movie was going to be the most. Actually,
totally. I mean, and what that could have opened up in terms of the rest of the Justice League, the Teen Titans, like huge implications and stuff. And it's kind of a bummer that we're never going to get that. That's done.
I'll say this though, in the Whedon cut, he was made by way of the mother box, and he goes about kind of discovering his abilities throughout the movie. Like he was made with technology that nobody understood. And I feel like they lean on that a little bit more, and I actually liked that. Some of that's taken out of the Snyder cut. And again, I'm still left missing what a cyborg movie could be, but I did like that aspect of mystery to him and his abilities. In the Snyder cut, he seems to already kind of know. There's less question about that. He does mention it a little bit more, but it's de-emphasized, I feel like, for the most part.
I feel like in the Snyder cut, he's given the tape from Joe Morton, aka Cyberdyne Systems. What is it with this guy building monsters, by the way, of robot?
Hey, it's a good cast.
But he's given a tape recorder by his dad, and his dad essentially tells him, you have technology well beyond anybody's understanding. You have the nuclear arsenal at your fingertips.
There are definitely hints at it, but they don't dwell on it at all.
Yeah, but you do get to see him testing it out. He sees the woman trying to get money out of her bank account, and she doesn't have any money in there. And then you've won $100,000 or whatever it was, and
he helps her rob a bank. Yeah, no, that's totally in there.
That's whatever, man.
You're right. I'm not even.
She didn't know.
It's fine.
But no, I agree with you. I think that the cyborg stuff is and the lack of that movie is definitely a bummer
in either movie. I liked part 2, how it was called the Age of Heroes, I think. In fact, this might go back to what we were talking about with the mother boxes. It explains how during the first attack, the Age of Heroes is what held back Darkseid and all that. So I actually really liked that, because I certainly didn't understand any of that from the Whedon cut when I watched it the first time. But this idea that the Age of Heroes existed before, and I never thought it would exist again, but that's the Justice League. That was cool. Like, I really like that stuff.
Love that. Love the minor changes there. I fully this was a specific moment that okay. So I admit, I kind of want some sick individual to take the best parts of the Whedon cut, and I think there are some very good parts in there. I think there are things in there that I really like, that when they showed up in this or didn't show up in this movie, I went, oh man, I was really hoping that was a Snyder thing.
Yeah.
There were a couple of things, and that sequence actually is one of them, mostly because it's slightly different, right? Like there's different footage, different heroes are used. The lantern is different that they chose, if I remember correctly.
No, lantern's the same, but there's more footage of it in the Snyder cut. Yeah.
But there were
because when I saw it in the Snyder cut, I was like, oh, they put a lantern in. I completely forgot about him from the Whedon cut, and then when I watched the Whedon cut, I was like, oh no, he is in there.
Yeah, he's in. I remember him in there for a second because I remember the ring flies away. It still has that scene in it. But yeah, like I hope somebody takes all those bits and edits them into the 5-hour cut or whatever it is, and I will watch.
Boy,
I will watch that and probably enjoy it the most.
Well, they're gonna have to change the aspect ratio. That's problem number one.
But since you're jumping to, before we get into the second chapter, I do want to mention something. Is the second chapter where Wonder Woman is introduced, or did that happen in the first one?
She still shows up in the first with her little bank robbery intro.
I want to talk about that for a second, because this is one of the most confounding things to me. This is one of the things that I absolutely think was just a really stupid choice on Zack Snyder's part. That whole sequence is really cool. Super unique, super interesting. Love seeing Wonder Woman stop a bank robbery. I love her intro where she's standing on top of the
Scales of Justice.
The Scales of Justice, Lady Justice. She's standing on like the sword, which is really cool. What kills me, choice of words, phrasing, about that sequence though, is that she goes through this thing. These guys are shooting stuff. They got a bomb. She gets rid of the bomb. She kills at least one or two of those guys easily by throwing their faces into brick. But then
the Snyder cut does not shy away from that stuff, man.
No,
and I don't think it's in the way that these guys are murderers. It's just in the way that he's going back to an era where we didn't think about that type of stuff. Really, it seems
and it's fine. Like, I don't care. That doesn't bother me that she killed somebody. Again, I can
get over it.
I live in the comic book world, man. There is no way half of these people that these people are injuring are alive. Like, they're just not.
Right.
But what confounds me about that scene is the way it ends. I cannot, for the life of me, get. She has all the speed, all the strength in the world. She stops a guy with a machine gun that's 5 feet in front of her with every bullet just bing, 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 bing. Then the guy is reloading his gun. And in the time between him reloading the gun, and he's doing it slowly, not even
in slow motion, quite possibly.
Not the Zack Snyder slow motion. I mean, this guy clearly was just like, okay, well,
he's like, check this out, Zach.
I don't need
off the
you.
Button.
Look,
I can do it myself.
I could slow mo the clip falling out. She decides to use her clinking her bracelets together, which ends up detonating in front of her, blowing out half the building, which absolutely
that
then
entire floor just
guarantees that dude is dead. He ain't living.
Extremely.
She then turns around to all of these kids and all these people at the school was on a field trip. And this girl, she like, all of them are like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And there's this one girl who's like super like freaked out. And she says, can I be like you when I grow up? And Wonder Woman looks at her and says, you can be anything you want to be. Confoundingly stupid dialogue right there. And I cannot, I don't mind that she killed people during the fight. It's that, why did you just endanger so many more people and cause so much more destruction, property damage?
Yeah, we see the building exploding from the POV of the police standing below the building.
And you have to know that at least one chunk of that hit some poor bystander in the face. And it's one of those moments where at the beginning of Batman vs Superman, we get that whole we get his response to the
end of Man of Steel,
to the end of
level
the
city.
And the response that so many people had about, well, Superman would never do this and all the destruction, all the people. We get the response, which was Bruce Wayne having that, this was terrible, and that's why he's so angry at Superman. So to follow that up, knowing what he had already dealt with into this, was one of those, why are you doing that?
But that's what I'm saying, man. He didn't, everything went in. Because that building exploding is not in the Whedon cut.
No, she stops after she attacks the guy, right? And then it's something, I don't remember if it's outside.
No, she does the bracelets, and then it's just, I don't know if it's outside, but it's just over. That's how that scene ends.
So, yeah,
the bracelets.
Okay, which, perfect. That's fine, I guess. It's a better way of doing it than, that's one where, Whedon was right on that choice.
Yeah, no, I had mentioned that as well, it seemed. But again,
I actually mentioned it while we were watching, and I'm like, well, she just killed all those people. And why did she destroy the building? And Beth was like, that's weird. That's a choice. All right.
The other note I have here from also part 2, or I guess that might have been part 1, but whatever, because it's speaking of also the differences between the Whedon and the Snyder cut. I can tell, and I didn't know this till after the fact, but I guess Snyder says that none of the stuff Whedon shot is in the Snyder cut.
Right.
Which is actually fine. I could totally see that if I was to come onto a project, especially one I had left halfway through and didn't want to.
Well, again, Snyder had 90% of it done, and it was what was remaining was mostly CGI.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm just saying I could see a world where even I arrive at a project and was like, what if I just disqualify all that stuff to make, even just to maintain whatever my vision might be, even if it's unfinished in a way,
Sure.
But there's another part of me that's like, hey, I'm going to use everything. Thank you so much. Everything is good. Good comes from everywhere, blah, 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 all that stuff. But I get it. I can tell, though, that the Whedon stuff was taken out because the jokes aren't funny.
Well, to be fair.
Largely speaking. In fact, hearing you say that Snyder wrote a lot of this was a question I was going to have, because I was curious how much was from his pen.
Him and Terrio.
Really? Okay.
And Terrio, my understanding is Terrio punched it up, but lightened it more than it was. So.
And that's fine. Whedon's also probably one of the best guys out there to have done the thing where you include the jokes in your action movie or action piece.
Well, and he, something to note about him, is that for a very long time, Whedon that's what he did in Hollywood. He
Right.
was a script doctor. He was a punch-up guy. That was his job. It wasn't until he decided to start doing stuff more for himself that he became the name he is. But he had been doing that for a very long time in Hollywood.
And it's his wheelhouse. Whether or not, chicken or egg there, it's what he's good at. So I'm not surprised, but it was easy to tell. That's certainly by the end of part 3 I have here that I can tell the jokes don't land for the most part, but
fair.
There's also way less of them, and it's not that type of movie. So sticking with the theme, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like in comparison, yes, this is not even close to as jokey as the Whedon version. But I also feel like in comparison to so many other Zack Snyder movies, it's not as dour. Like I said at the beginning, I do feel like it was
I buy that. Yeah,
I do feel like it was lightened up. It's still definitely on the dour side, especially with the color palette and all that. But
I can't think of a single joke from Batman versus Superman, actually.
Jesse Eisenberg.
That's actually my line. You enjoyed his performance to some extent.
Yeah, I don't actually mind him whatsoever, because if you're gonna whine about his Lex Luthor, you better also be complaining about how awful Gene Hackman was in the original movies. Like, he's a terrible Lex Luthor.
I have thought about that,
and I love him, but he's awful as Lex Luthor.
Well, because I remember as a kid that sticking out, being like, "Is he the bad guy?"
Yeah,
because he's fun to watch. Like, and actually, Donner's Superman will come up later with the question you posed to me via text not too long ago. But
sure,
I guess we'll get there.
We will, potentially.
I'm into episode 4.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm blowing by any of your stuff.
No, you're good.
Okay,
we're fine.
For some reason, episode 4 brought out all the suit questions. I think it might be where Flash is introduced, or we get most on him. Or maybe it's just when we first see him in action.
Blows my frigging mind that sequence was cut. I do not, like, that's one of those Whedon things that it's confounding to me. How you cut out of all of the introductions, Flash's is the perfect introduction to who he is as a character.
So,
and
nothing on his suit. He just kind of shows up and he's already got a suit. And I'm like, well, that seems kind of...
Well, we do... Yes and no. I mean, we still get the sequence where Batman, where Bruce goes to Barry's house and Barry has the suit made, and Batman specifically says, "This is what they use on the space shuttles."
Is that still in there? Okay,
yep.
Maybe I blinked or went to the bathroom.
Yep, it's still in there.
Or missed something during the 4.5 hour movie somehow.
It is definitely, it's nearly the exact same scene, and that happens to be the scene where that billboard for suicide prevention comes in. They do their talk, they walk to the car, he explains the Speed Force in the briefest manner possible. As they pull out, there's a big billboard right there.
Yeah, that seemed a little bit weird, but it was offset by, get this, I think this is the best Batman suit that's been in any of the movies ever.
You will not get actually any argument from me. I consistently have liked the bat suits so far that Affleck has had to wear. I think all of them are very cool in their
I mean, they're
respect.
they're super Dark Knight Frank Miller stuff, right?
Totally, yeah, definitely.
I like the stuff I never liked about the Christian Bale stuff was how they obviously wanted it to be more realistic, so more mobile,
Yeah.
So he always had kind of a bulbous head thing going on because they wanted him to have some neck movement. I like that they went back to the Batman can't move his neck, the 1980s suit basically in Justice League. So, okay, well, that's more on the suits than I thought I would mention. I also didn't remember that Aquaman came all suited up because the movie didn't come out until after Justice League. So I was like, I thought the whole Justice League he wasn't suited up, but he kind of shows up.
Well, that was I feel like the Whedon cut actually does give him that. Like, he goes to get it. He goes back to Atlantis to ask for it specifically. In the Snyder cut, he never goes back to Atlantis. It's brought to him. I don't remember if the suit
he goes when Steppenwolf takes the mother box from Atlantis and they have that discussion, but it doesn't end, if I remember correctly, it doesn't end with the Whedon cut where he's like semi accepts his responsibility and tells Mira, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to need something from you then. And that's, he gets the pitchfork in the suit. I don't think he says that.
He never says that. Right.
But in any event, the main thing from episode 3 episode 4, I'm going backwards. I didn't know that So Darkseid came to Earth and tried to take over and was thwarted by the Age of Heroes or whatever, the alliance of man,
Amazons and Atlanteans
and Amazonians,
and aliens. Because
there's some aliens in there. Oh, that's right. There's
the
the
lanterns.
And, yeah, gotcha. I didn't know that after that, apparently Darkseid didn't know what planet that was. That became a mystery.
Right.
And he didn't know where he was beaten. He does get knocked out at the end, so maybe, I guess. But that shows up in episode 4, where Steppenwolf, in his many in fact, I want to say a lot of what was added to the Snyder Cut was CGI scenes, easily enough, where Steppenwolf is talking to Darkseid or talking to his minion. Like, we don't see Darkseid
Desaad, yeah.
Desaad. Darkseid's assistant is Desaad.
Desaad, yes.
Just he takes out a couple letters of his own name. That's kind of,
yeah.
I like it.
And adds some letters, but yes.
Maybe. It depends.
More like Desaad.
Is that a comic thing where he doesn't know where the battle was? Because that I probably could have done without that, and the Snyder Cut. It seemed a little weird.
So no, I don't remember that, but I do know that one of the constant thing from the comics is him trying to find and activate the anti-life equation, which is the ultimate point of the movie for it to be a trilogy, and all the nightmare stuff completely revolves around the anti-life equation. How and where, and the fact that it's written into the grounds of the earth, and that's why part of why Steppenwolf is even more, I mean, that honestly, what it comes down to is Steppenwolf has been banished from Apocalypse for being a dingus. And,
I got that.
Right. And he's trying to put the mother boxes back together because it will bring an exceptional amount of power. Darkseid has all the power already. He doesn't really need the extra power, but it'll allow for a whole lot of ease in travel and whatnot. It's that what the mother boxes do is they provide him with the vision of where the anti-life equation actually is. And that is what he is trying to use to get his back in Darkseid's good graces. Okay.
I don't think that was explained super well, I'm going to say, because my other question that was all related to was, why isn't Darkseid doing this himself?
And, so because he can't.
And that kind of answers that, because he I can see now by what you just explained, it's beneath him until he knows that's where the anti-life equation is.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's there is, and that's why he's fine. He's all right. Steppenwolf, go ahead. Do what you're going to do. You get all the mother boxes together. I'm going to come there and we'll rule together. He doesn't care one way or the other if Steppenwolf dies, which we get, at the end of the movie, we get his reaction to the whole situation. But yeah, for Darkseid, the anti-life equation is the entire purpose of everything that he wants.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, certainly explained better or more, explained more in the Snyder Cut versus the Whedon Cut. Episode 4, we also get Martian Manhunter, which is cool. I'll read you my exact notes here. Cool, but why? ? Oh, right. Because why not is the Snyder Cut question.
So I actually, this has come up a few times, and I actually don't hate it, and I kind of love it because, number one, it ties all the movies together. That character that Martian Manhunter is portraying before, when he switches back from Lois or from Martha to the General, was the General from Man of Steel.
Oh,
if you didn't watch that recently,
I did not catch that.
Yeah, so there's an ongoing thread here. That character has been in all the movies.
Interesting.
This was also not something that was just randomly reshot. This was originally shot with purpose. There was going to be more Martian Manhunter. And I actually do love this because it does explain something that the Whedon cut doesn't. And you're supposed to just okay, time doesn't matter anymore, because somehow we're told here's where Martha Kent is. And then 2 scenes later, now she's suddenly in New York, or Metropolis, for no reason, which is far away from where Smallville is and where she is now moved to, the part of Smallville she's moved to, or part of Kansas, whatever, to work in the diner. she's not going to randomly go to Metropolis for any of this. There is no reason for it. And the Whedon cut cutting this out didn't explain it. There was nothing. It was just, okay, Martha's suddenly there to talk Lois back into becoming. No, it's not that Martha wouldn't do it. It's that, like, it's not that she wouldn't talk to Lois. It's that she would not go all the way out to Metropolis in that situation during that time like that. It wouldn't have happened. It didn't make any sense. This at least made it make sense.
I didn't have as much of an issue. Maybe we're getting off the Manhunter topic here. I didn't have as much of an issue with Martha going to Metropolis to talk to Lois as I had with Lois not being Lois at all in the Snyder Cut. Like, she is depressed at home and needs somebody to which I'm not saying this isn't a common, thing that happens to people, and people that you love need to come and help. That's fine. I just don't think that's Lois's thing. Lois would have buried her head in her work. And while the Whedon cut doesn't necessarily give us that Lois either, she's at work and depressed, she's on puff pieces instead of doing actual, like,
Agreed.
There's certainly still a downtime.
Agreed.
I don't think either one of them gets them right, but I think the Whedon cut got it closer. Like, seeing Lois just kind of mope around the house, depressed, that was not a Lois I've ever seen.
That's totally, I 100% agree. And I think that this is a case where, editing those bits together, I think makes a more a rounded out Lois for me. But I agree with you. Lois has never in the comics and never would just stop working. That's out of character for her in every respect.
Yeah, and
she's not given much to do anyways, so it's like,
no, she's not in either movie a ton. Like, done dirty a little bit in both, I guess.
Both her and Jimmy Olsen done very dirty, and I
don't even remember Jimmy Olsen. Does he show up in either of these?
He is in. Maybe one of the dumbest choices I think Snyder did was in Batman versus Superman. Lois goes to some country in like the Middle East to interview a terrorist leader or something. And
I remember.
Her cameraman, who is a CIA agent, actually is Jimmy Olsen, and he gets killed right away.
Right.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Super stupid. Super dumb.
Oh, now he can come back as Guardian or whatever they end up doing. I know that's the TV show, but
why not?
I don't know. So that's episode 4 for me. Anything for you?
No, I'm with you as you're going.
Okay, right.
I didn't write notes like that. Like, I'm kind of going off of a lot of it's the memory of what occurred in the order, and I've got certain notes about certain things. But
something tells me we're on the same wavelength, or we're doing the thing where each of us has the half that the other doesn't have just by nature.
Put us together, we form a somewhat fully functional human being.
Speaking of which, not a whole lot of mention of Superman and bringing him back until maybe episode 4,
right,
or 5.
Yeah. When they actually are getting ready to bring him back.
Yeah, which I like, actually. I like that the movie wasn't necessarily centered around him, even though when it became a thing, it became a very big thing, a linchpin. It did become apparent around this time, though, that I think the whole thing overall, maybe just Zack Snyder's writing style, the Snyder style, isn't very good overall. Like, there's another character issue. In fact, maybe that's the line we follow here with Lois's character issue. I think, for as much as I agree with you that I like Affleck as Batman, I think the suit's awesome, and I think he's one of the best presences, one of the best Batmans that has been.
Sure.
In the Snyder Cut, he is this bastion of faith that, again, I've never seen a Batman be, even Adam West. So in the Whedon Cut, I actually really liked what they did with his character and his relationship with Superman, in that he felt a little guilty for killing him, whatever.
Oh, no.
But he also understood his place. Like, there's that really cool conversation between him and Alfred, which we can get to Alfred. I also think he was done dirty in both the movies, where Alfred's trying to I can't remember what Alfred's point is, but he doesn't get it up on Batman. Batman comes back with something like the team needs Clark, like
more than they need him.
The world needs Superman, the team needs Clark.
Yes. And then he says more than they need me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that line, one of the ones that I absolutely miss. Yeah, definitely.
And that relationship overall, I think, very better in the Whedon cut than it is in the Snyder cut, where again, Batman, like, they're flying away, I think, to go, it might be on the final mission, and Batman just kind of walking backwards into the airplane saying, because of faith, Alfred.
Okay.
And they fly away. I'm like,
so
who is that?
No, so I'm going to disagree with you on this pretty much all the way. Number one, there have definitely been comics where Batman's faith in Superman has been questioned, tested, and he has had to say, I can't do this. I need Clark to do it, and I have to hope that he's going to. So in terms of comic stuff, that's not out of character for him. Also, in the movie, I also don't think it's out of character for him, because he's making a change where he recognizes when he says faith, he's talking about it in a different way. He's talking about it more like, it's not the religious faith. It's the
no.
He recognizes, and I read that particular him turning around going, faith, Alfred, was him almost taking the piss out of Alfred. He knows this is going to work. He knows Superman is going to come back. What he doesn't know is what Superman is going to be like. He recognizes that, and I don't think it's out of character for him to take the piss out of Alfred a little bit, and I also don't think it's out of character for him to, in this particular version, especially after Batman versus Superman, where we've gone, his character growth being Alfred constantly telling him, you've got to do some stuff, but you need help. You need help. You need this. You need that. He's like, Alfred is the one. He's speaking to Alfred on Alfred's level. Like Alfred is giving him a reason to have faith, and he's taking that just like he has everything else from Alfred in his life. Alfred has always been the father figure. He's got to have some faith in other people that aren't just Alfred. And that's what that indicates to me. And I will also say, I don't think Alfred was done dirty. I mean, I think he's underutilized, but I don't think he was not done dirty the way Lois was by any means.
No, not that bad.
He still has an integral part to the movie. He's still an integral part to Batman's life and to the team. And, I admit, I like Jeremy Irons in the role significantly more than I ever thought I would. I think that it's interesting they've made him a far more hands-on. He's almost like a combination of Alfred and Lucius Fox, where he's like, yeah, well, I mean, Master Wayne's been gone, so I decided to build these gauntlets for him. What?
Well, no, I think that's part of it too, and this is going to wrap all into the faithy Batman and Alfred done dirty.
Alfred done dirty.
Alfred done dirty. Because, and I do like Jeremy Irons. I think part of the reason I'm disappointed is because I saw what could have been. I saw us almost, or certainly could have got, the virile special forces Alfred that yes, isn't in every comic, but is always fun and certainly would have been a new take cinematically at this point.
It's great when he shows up even as the old man Alfred that can like every now and again in the comics he just whips out a judo throw and the sorry, forgot to tell you. Special forces.
Yeah, so I would have loved that and didn't get that. But also every time Alfred, and sure, this is Batman after he's been operating for 20 years, so I get how this wouldn't be the relationship at this point necessarily. But because of that, even that reason, true or not, every time Alfred has but think about this, Bruce, where in every other movie it's like, you're right, good thing you're here. And I think that's what you said. It's kind of what we expect. He never wins those arguments. Like, Batman always has one up on him afterwards, and Batman always ends up being right at the end of those arguments. So it's kind of like, sorry, Alfred. Like, he ends up looking like this horrible cynic most of the time is the weird thing.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's probably, we're splitting hairs here. I don't know. It's what we're bringing maybe too. But I think it might be because it bounces off this Batman who, I don't mind faith in Superman. Like, I'm down with that because honestly, that's kind of what Whedon is doing also there, just with different lines. It's that Batman has this like faith and not for the whole movie, just kind of intermittently, it seems, that everything will work out. Batman's a get the job done guy. He might have the faith, but he doesn't ever voice it. Even inner monologue-y in all those detective comics, he's never the guy that's cheering somebody else up. Like, that doesn't fit for me.
Very, very, very infrequently. But he does. And I could pull books out that show it, but it's
yeah, I'm sure you're right, actually, but
it's the infrequency of it. And then on top of that, it's what has been presented to us. But again, I still go back to every time faith is mentioned, to me, it's him taking a jab at Alfred. And while
I didn't get that, but
that's because, yeah. and I get it. And the way it's because of the way he says it and the grin, like the grin on his face. He's got he has a.
Also, that would be pretty dark if he was, though. Like, it's faith, Alfred, right? Flying away.
What else is he going to do? He's literally going out to fight a creature from another planet that has all the power in the world. And he's the smartest guy there, but he sure ain't the strongest. And he's actually noted that I can't do this forever. Like, I'm at the end of my rope, man. I'm like, right. I'm there. And then the other thing is, well, I can see where you're at with Alfred always kind of being on the losing end of the discussions. And that's it's a Snyder thing. I think I can read it as while Alfred is not necessarily right, he is still the one that's guiding Bruce to the right answer at the end of the day. He is still the one that gives him well, if you do it, what about this? I can't do that, Alfred, because this has to be done. No, this has to be done. Got it.
Sure. Yeah. To me, that's still getting done dirty, but
that's fair. I don't think I will disagree with it. To be fair, I still, to right now, for me, the absolute pinnacle, the top tier Alfred that has been on in media that is not comic books is from Gotham. That is a perfect Alfred.
Okay. You've got me there. I haven't watched
that. Well, because he's everything that you're talking about. He still talks to Bruce, but Bruce is still very resistant because Bruce is younger. He does do the special forces stuff. He's involved, like all the things you're talking about. That's the Gotham Alfred by far.
Okay. All right. A couple little writing, the whole exchange that ends in "this red cape charges back." Like, that might have been the biggest groan for the entire Snyder cut for me. Because it's literally, and it's one of Alfred's losing conversations where he's like, no, it's why are you making the bull charge or bringing out the red cape? And he's like, because this red cape charges back. I had to rewind it. I'm like, I misheard that 3 times, and I'm like, no, I didn't, and maybe I still did. I don't know. Somebody could come back to me right now and be like, no, he actually said this, and I'd be like, oh, of course, that's
significantly better.
But
yeah, no,
as it stands, it appears to be bad.
That was a silly line. Yeah.
Anyway, I think we're at the end of part 5, which brings us into the last and final part of the Snyder Cut. Is that right?
The resurrection and the fight, right?
Right. Or, well, I guess the fight takes place at the end of part 5 because they kept in the whole, Superman's back but doesn't know he's Superman. And then essentially because cyborgs, which I can't remember which movie this was now, but I feel like in one of the movies he says because he's recently integrated with the mother box, his body is doing things he can't control. But then I felt like in one of them, all he said was auto defense systems. I can't stop it. So I don't know if that was in both movies or not, but the movie that had that explanation is better.
Yeah. The Snyder Cut does not mention anything. When he starts to turn his hand starts to turn into a gun. In the Snyder Cut, he just says, "I can't stop this. I don't know what's happening." Basically.
Okay. Yeah. It must be the Whedon cut then, where he's like, I've recently. It's not this bad, but he's like, I've recently integrated with the mother box, and that's why I can't control what's going on right now. Felt like was a much better in the moment explanation.
See, I didn't feel like that was even necessary at that point in the movie because we've been given so much information on the mother boxes, and then we got a freaking what's it called, the montage of him trying to figure stuff out. Like I was not able to walk away from that montage going, oh, well, now he knows everything about him. Like, no, it didn't bother me at all. So whatever.
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
I'll tell you what did bother me in that scene, though.
Do it.
So this is a Whedon did something better in this scene overall, but the one thing that really bugged me over in that sequence was we've got the cop who's standing there and he's watching over the memorial. Superman comes back, they show the cop and he pulls a gun out.
I feel like there's always in the Snyder cut, that's right, it's like a slow-mo, like pulls it out of its holster, and I'm like, alrighty, bud.
Like again, sir, I have some questions for you, some deep ones. Are you familiar with Superman and where you're standing? Because if you are, you may be aware that the bullet won't do anything.
Maybe that's why he got chose for the Superman memorial thing. They're like, hey, who wants to take Superman memorial duty? Hey, Bob, he's never heard of Superman. Let's have him do it.
Yeah, let's give the guy with the itchy trigger finger who's probably killed people for no reason. Let's get that guy. It doesn't matter here. Yeah. The one thing, so the one thing about that sequence that I actually really hated, and I won't say I hated it, but I really disliked it in the Snyder cut, in comparison to the Whedon cut, is why Lois is there. In the Snyder cut, she's there because she's there. She happened to be at the memorial. She walks away from it. Then she hears stuff, turns around, sees him floating in the air, and goes back to the memorial. Whedon's cut had a much better purpose, and it gives.
Oh yes,
and it,
she's the big guns. I loved it,
and I know I did. I absolutely, because that was Batman. Batman would know that. He would think ahead of time. That's such a Batman thing to do. Of course I had Lois on standby. Why wouldn't I? I called her.
The Snyder Cut Batman has energy absorbing gauntlets. That's his thing.
Well,
he thinks ahead.
Thankfully, we were given a heads up on those earlier when Alfred was telling Wonder Woman about them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was one of those moments of I am glad though there's that stupid freaking, and I hated it. I didn't like it in the movie when I saw it. Didn't like it in follow-ups. The Superman gets punched or Superman punches Batman. He goes, "Yep, something's bleeding." Or something's bleeding internally.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Super stupid. I'm glad that wasn't in there. But I did dislike the lack of that's detective stuff 101 for him, right? Like Lois would have been contacted.
Yeah. Still
love that sequence, and I absolutely freaking love that we get a moment of Superman showing how fast he is. With
the moment of fight,
where he's holding everybody back, flashes in his flash motion, he's in the Speed Force, and Superman's eye moves in normal
just that
speed,
one eyeball, yep.
And which causes Barry to trip, which I also liked a great deal. Speaking of something, I do want to mention that I also this is a Snyderism that I don't agree with. It's actually something that this is one of those weird. They did it. And it made sense for X-Men, but it doesn't here. And that's when Quicksilver grabs somebody, he specifically notes in the X-Men movies, not Avengers. I don't think it ever gets brought up there. But in the X-Men movies, he specifically notes he has to hold their head so that he doesn't snap their necks when they run. I don't like
nice touch.
That is not the Flash, because when the Flash touches somebody, they are now in the Speed Force with him. They don't need that. So I hate that when at the beginning, when they're going through and it's that first fight against Steppenwolf with the whole league outside of Superman, they're in they're finding
that silo or whatever.
Yeah, they find Joe Morton and everything and all the people that have been kidnapped because they're still searching for the last mother box. That in the Whedon cut, we get that great moment of Batman saying, "Just save one." And I hated that wasn't in there. That's such a bummer, because that's a Batman moment, man, for sure. For him to bring everything down for a second, look at Barry and get Barry's head in the game. And Barry goes and pulls them all out. In this, we just get Barry running up and down the stairs going, "Can we go a little faster?" Which, great. That's funny. Just do it, Barry. You can do this. This is this was a Snyderism that is unfounded in the comics. Flash can touch people and run them, and they're not going to break their neck. It's stupid.
I'm telling you, man. I keep seeing little things like that, and I don't put Snyder on the level of,
Whedon. Yeah, I know.
It's hard to think of those directors that made comic book movies without any reverence for the genre or however that goes. I don't put him in that league. I think he does care about the material, and I think he cares about doing it right. I just don't know that he cares that much. Like I think he cares more about slow motion and stuff, how it looks, which he's arguably better at. But there are a few times where I think the same thing in that way. Like Barry's character doesn't sing as well in the Snyder Cut as it does in the Whedon cut, I think, because that's a Whedon character in a way. Like Whedon would do a better job with stuff like that. Like in the Snyder Cut, and not all of it lands in the Whedon cut for me either. I think there's a couple eye-rolly moments at Flash's line.
Oh yeah, no, he's got some bad stuff in the Whedon cut.
But in the Snyder Cut, I think it's a little worse. Like he doesn't, and
it's another case where I feel like that's where I want to see the combination of the two movies because the one thing Whedon failed at immensely was giving Barry any of his real due, and that introduction was so important in my opinion. Again, one of the things that gets lost in both movies is the Whedon cut fails for a number of reasons, the least of which being it is relatively incomprehensible if you don't know stuff. You don't know Barry's backstory? Well, too bad. You're not getting any of it here. Wait for another movie. Too bad. Cyborg, you're not getting anything here. Wait for another movie. The Snyder Cut, we get more backstory, but there's still a bunch of stuff in there where if you don't know, you're never going to know. It's not going to make any bloody sense to you. And then you've also got the things that, like you said, I think Snyder has an appreciation for some of the stories, but then you go back to the way he films them, and then you think about Watchmen and that he never really wanted to do cape movies. He wanted to do things like Watchmen and Sucker Punch and those types of, his heroes are always going to end on a bad note. They're never going to be successful or there is no ultimate winner. It's there's always going to be the dour part of it. And I think you're right in that he does do that to Barry a little bit, but again, I have to say that I think while Whedon, I think, got the overall goofiness of the character of Flash right, he got him too far to the goofiness.
Sure. Whereas
I think Snyder got the characterization right, but didn't quite go far enough with the goofiness. There was like he just didn't, they were both on the opposite ends of the spectrum, and neither of them quite hit that where they needed to in the middle.
Sure. Yeah. For the viewer, this cut of the podcast is going to go on forever. So fair warning.
Yeah.
It's already over an hour, but also I think we're into the end for my money. So
sure.
I don't know. I have the least amount of notes from here on out. It's like there's no civilians as part of the ending, and I like that.
That whole Russian thing was so stupid. Dostoevsky.
Yeah, that was an obvious Whedon addition. Yeah, it never made sense to me when I saw it. I'm like, why do they live in the irradiated landscape? Like
I remember us walking out of the theater going, I don't understand why the people were there at the end and why we focused any time on that family.
I get why, like on paper, they want to put some heart into it, but when it's taken out, it works better. So you could have left it out, I think, anyways, my opinion.
Especially since the heart was there and it was Cyborg and you just decided to butcher that.
Yeah, good point.
Well, it's a point. Don't know if it's good or not, but it's a point.
Do you have anything about how the movie wraps up?
That ending, significantly better. I think it fits. I think that the way that they all fought, that entire, this is one of those, I feel like people are going to go one way or the other on it. I hate the ending of the Whedon version and how it's all red. I will take the gray and the less, like the washed out colors that Snyder did, because there's at least color there that isn't red. I hated that. I freaking hated it. I hated the entire ending of that movie because it was red.
Well, there's some bad bits in there too where they get blown up and they're lying on their backs and Superman's like, oh, I take it back, I wish I was dead, like that. None of that was good,
which I mean, it's so stupid. It's such a stupid,
I didn't like that.
No, it's because that's not for Superman can be goofy, But actually, no, he can't. Superman isn't goofy. He's corny.
Yep.
That's what Superman is. And that's not corny. That's goofy. That's a Flash line. Definitely. Cyborg. Sure. I could see that. Yeah. Nobody else.
So yeah, I actually agree. Snyder Cut ended better. I thought I like the ending of the Snyder Cut better.
I like which one? Because there's like 8.
Yes. Next question: how you like that epilogue, which I believe was subtitled "Here's a pile of stingers" or something like that.
Basically, it was like, I filled all these stingers. We might as well put them all at once. But the overall ending, the fight against Steppenwolf, loved it. I love I did really love the decapitation, the head rolling back through the portal under Darkseid's foot, where he's flanked by Desaad and Granny Goodness, and he just, because now he knows the anti-life equation is on Earth, he knows where to go. I love that the last thing we get from him is, the
stare down with the Justice League through the portal.
The stare down, and then the thread of we'll do things we'll do it the old way. Ready the Armada.
The old, yeah.
Love that. Like, I love that idea. That's delightful to me, right? I loved seeing Granny Goodness for the brief second she's in the movie. That was cool. Briefly, the black suit, the regeneration suit. So that is comic accurate. There is a regeneration suit that's used at a point, but not the way that they're using it here. Like, for him to put that on to go fight Steppenwolf, totally into it. Like, I love that, because he's not full powered Superman. He's just been brought back to life. That was the point of the regeneration suit, for him to essentially absorb more nice of UV faster.
Did not. I have read that comic run and never got that.
That was basically the point of it was allowed him to power up faster, like get back to normal.
Using third grade science. You know, he's meanwhile, his little robot in this spaceship is tying up black garbage bags and letting them, float up in the lawn.
Yeah, basically.
Look at this.
I did it. I did not like that was the suit that he wore when he pulls open his shirt. That should have been
that was interesting.
That should have been back to the blue shirt. I did not like that. That's the thing that speaks to where Zack Snyder wanted to go with the story. And I admit, I like what Zack Snyder was doing. I don't like that. I'm 3 movies into a Superman who is still coming to grips with who he is. And while I love Henry Cavill. I love the guy as Superman. I love him. He has he's got the look. He's got the, I think Henry Cavill is a great Superman.
Is there any reason why my wife waited until, granted it's one of his earliest moments in the film, but when he shoots up out of the coffin and lands in front of the
memorial
statue, the memorial that's all fallen down, no shirt but pants, and my wife's like, he's my favorite Superman. And I'm like, you said that really loud immediately after he showed up half naked. And then I agreed.
I mean, to be fair, I said the same thing. I'm like, I wish my chest looked like that. Hairy, but buff.
Just hairy.
Yeah, no, I'm just hairy in the stomach. I'm fat. But
you've got literally the pecs just
they're lower.
Where in the stomach area. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not a 6-pack. It's a 6-pack, but not from. Anyways,
you've swallowed an entire can of beer. I have 6 times.
6 times. I love Cavill. I feel like he has been let down by both Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder, because I do think that these 3 movies, yes, I where he's at, fine. He needs growth, and the end of that movie should have signaled his growth back to becoming the Man of Steel, the Man in Blue, the Superman that is hope.
He never got his actual Superman movie. He got origin story. He got BVS. He got Justice League. We never got him being Superman beginning to end in a movie, whatever that is.
Right. I hate that there's a good chance we'll never get it either. Yeah. There is Warner Brothers has reached out to Nessie Coates is writing a Superman movie apparently for J.J. Abrams. Coates is best known in the comic book world for writing Black Panther and Captain America. He just finished his Captain America run. It's a really great run.
Who's Captain America in that run?
Captain America, Steve Rogers.
Steve Rogers, okay.
Yeah. But he's writing it he's writing the Black Superman. Which is again comic. There's a comic accurate. There is.
I did see this. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which cool. Fine. Whatever. I still want Henry Cavill to be a Superman,
but not the Black Superman.
I mean, I don't think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's what I didn't want.
Yeah. No, I think that's a poor choice. Let him be white Superman, and then somebody else can be the Black Superman. That's I think how that should work. If Hollywood's going back to blackface, I think we've really regressed. But this kind of feeds into the rest of the ending, including the epilogues.
Okay, go.
Talking about the major epilogue, that's kind of the ultimate epilogue, the one that everybody is curious about, the one where actual reshoots took place. He was able to gather Ben Affleck back with Jared Leto and Amber Heard, Ray Fisher, and Ezra Miller to do the nightmare sequence at the end. That was brand new footage. That's what he reshot. It's brand new footage.
It didn't even look like he used whatever actually, because I got to the end and I was like, wait, they took the nightmare sequence out altogether? And then no, it's just part of the pile of stingers at the end.
Right. So that along with so Miller is wearing the suit, the future suit that we see in Batman versus Superman when we get the first nightmare vision, and he comes through during the dream and says, am I early? I'm too early. Lois is the key. Bop. So we got him in that outfit. So this is directly connected to that. We know that for a fact. We've now seen maybe the coolest set piece in the movie that was outrageously rad was seeing Barry go into the Speed Force and go back in time, but he only goes back in time like 30 seconds, and watching it rebuild the world around him when he's going to fix basically Superman, everybody failing, Darkseid winning, all of that stuff in the at that last fight with Steppenwolf. Barry has to go back in time, and he talks about how he's like, I know that's not a good idea, but I got to do it.
Right.
So we know he can do it. That's obviously not the first time he's done it, but it's not something he wants to do. We get to the nightmare sequence. I actually really liked the entire nightmare sequence. I loved the change in dialogue that we got on the boat between Deathstroke and Luthor. That we didn't get shouldn't we form a league of our own? It's like
it's so weird to me that they stuck with that phrasing too. Like, shouldn't we form a league of our own? I'm like,
that was.
But I mean, I love Tom Hanks, but
no, everybody. That was hey, Lori Petty is cool too. Wink. But I didn't even hate Leto here. The voice is different. He's not. It's definitely not the same Joker that was used in Suicide Squad. I don't love him. He's still not great. He's got 5 lines, but it works. It's fine. What this ultimately brings to me though is I am invested enough to where if they announced, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go crazy here. We're going to J.J. Abrams is going to make a Superman movie. Zack Snyder is going to get to do his next 2 Justice League movies, and we've got the Flash movie, and we're doing all this stuff. I'd be thrilled with it, because we're at a guaranteed point now where the Flash movie that's coming out is going to be Flashpoint. We already know it's Flashpoint. So
it's multiverse at the very least.
Right. So I'm cool with the Snyderverse. Give it to me, because we can get another multiverse version of any of these characters. What I want is Henry Cavill to get his Superman movie. I want Ben Affleck to do especially that's after true, seeing Manganiello. He didn't
get his Batman movie either.
Yeah, and if we go back to talk about that, remember that the Justice League movie, along with what happened with BVS, basically turned him into an alcoholic. He had his.
I read that. Yeah, I saw the actual
and
thing.
he was told by friends when things were picking back up and they were talking about sequels and whatnot. That
he was also going through a divorce, but like I don't want to say those two movies led to his alcoholism. I think it was more his personal life he was having, and then he was on these two movies that got reviled, and
he was unhappy with how things were going. He was look, the fact that he's not come out and said anything in particular about Whedon, but he's supported Ray Fisher. Gal Gadot has come out against Whedon. Momoa has come out in support and said things were a little fishy. Affleck had a movie written with Manganiello to do a Batman versus Deathstroke movie. He wanted the action sequences to be like they were in the trailer for Arkham Knight, the video game, which, yeah, give me that. I want that movie. But at the end of the day, I can say that I'm really glad we got the sequences. We got the bumpers with Martian Manhunter comes back. He introduces himself as Martian Manhunter to Bruce. He puts on he doesn't even put on the airs. He just straight up is wearing his Martian face, his normal face. I loved that. I loved the epilogue. Yeah, it was 30 minutes of epilogue. I liked it. I did. I really liked it. So I guess really at the end of it all, for me, this is a significant improvement over the Whedon cut. Like leaps and bounds significantly better. This is a movie that I can say I really, really enjoyed without a hint of irony. I really, really love this movie. It's not perfect. It's not the Justice League I ever thought I'd see, but I'm still getting an Elseworlds that has aspects of characters that I love. It has characters that I do know. It has people in it that I enjoyed watching be those characters. And it was, outside of the 35 plus minutes of slow-mo, movie was good.
I did enjoy it. I will absolutely agree with you. It is an interesting question to think about which one is better, quote unquote. Maybe this will go into that final question you have for me, for us.
Yes.
But it's an interesting exercise because in a lot of instances, Whedon made the cuts that I would have made, even though the end product is obviously just a hodgepodge, just certainly a did the best he could type situation. And maybe even not that. No, I'm sure he did the best he could, but to then just be given the Snyder Cut, which is everything, just everything that could possibly be in the most Snydery way possible. I want to say, in fact, didn't you tell me or text me, or maybe we talked about it real quick after last week's show because you had already seen it or parts of it. I think you called it an exercise in excess. Was that you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we definitely talked about it.
It's definitely that, for better or worse. And still, at the end of the day, I did enjoy watching it. I am not going to be as nice to that nightmare sequence.
I can't imagine many people will be.
I think if I spoke about Snyder not being as good of a writer as Whedon or whatever, any of the problems of the writing I've mentioned, I think are very apparent in that scene, whether it's Leto or Batman or whatever it is, but wasn't into it. Go watch the Snyder Cut. Watch it in parts. Watch it with your family, although look up how many swear words are in it ahead of time, like I did not, because it's darker. So I don't know where the conversation, it's a continuation of whatever conversation we had about what movies are now, and I think I'm just maybe more confused at this point. So let's come back to it yet again. And after we answer this question, do you still want to do this question?
Yeah. I have, and there's purpose behind it too. I do want to mention one final thing about the Snyder Cut overall.
Okay.
The last thing that I fully admit I really was bummed out was not in this, and I knew it wasn't going to be. I knew it was a Whedonism, but I still loved that moment, and I thought it was actually not only was it funny, but it was sweet, and it kind of was, to me, it was an important moment for the group, and I think it still has a place in this cut, is Aquaman sitting on the lasso.
So good.
That moment, for being so goofy overall, is a great team moment for that group of people. And I think that moment of Aquaman levity being as true, oh, we're all going to die. I don't want to die. I got a lot of things I want to still do.
Oh, you're beautiful.
Yeah, no, yeah. It was a great moment. And I think it was actually something that was one of the few things that, and the Just Save One were the two best things Whedon added to the movie that were not there. And I would love to have seen those added back.
Has he spoken to why? Like, was that a decision on his end? Was it legal? I can't imagine it would have been that. Like, the studio's got to own. So
he never watched the Whedon cut. He never saw it because everybody reviled it, and because it wasn't his movie.
Oh, interesting.
And he never wanted to. And actually, he was told by, I want to say, Christopher Nolan, don't see it.
Well, yeah, if he had got that far and hadn't seen it and now got like greenlit on the Snyder cut, yeah, I totally would have been like, don't.
No. Nolan told him,
by no means go back and watch what's already been done. Then, like, just keep going.
No, Nolan told him, don't watch it, like right after it came out. He was like, don't see it.
Well,
so
a lot of people said that.
So the question that I want to ask, and this is an extremely subjective question.
Yeah, it's a nightmare question.
It's a nightmare question. There's so much talk about what makes this movie good or bad or what have you. And then there's all the discussion you can have around the major differences between what the MCU is and what the DCU is, and how different they are, and how there's, you talk, the MCU has Kevin Feige. Those movies, when you break them down, the differences come from the directors, not really from the writing. And when you really look at them, for as homogenous as the DCU happens to be under Snyder, I would argue the MCU is pretty homogenous itself. The fight scenes overall, with the exception of a handful of them, are all very samey across the movies, from Iron Man all the way through Infinity War. They're very much the same fight over and over and over again. It's constant. Doctor Strange, that was different. Guardians had some different stuff, but that's it. Everywhere else, the fights are almost exactly the same. The dialogue stretches, and it's all real similar. And the DCU does the same. Like that's the thing, right? The DCU also has that going for it. You've got the sameness of anything that Snyder's done, which also then was forced to be retroactively added into things like Suicide Squad, which we all know is garbage. But then the original Wonder Woman still had some of that Snyderism going on for it. Birds of Prey, not as much. Birds of Prey has kind of moved away from it. Shazam moved away from it a little bit. But you're still, if you look at Wonder Woman to Shazam to Birds of Prey, even those, there's a little homogeny there. Not quite as much, because again, there's no Kevin Feige in Warner Brothers. The DCU is definitely we've got a whole bunch of suits that are saying, you go. We don't care. Just make them fit. Kevin Feige is, I want this to be homogenous because I want us to be in a single world. So it makes sense.
Dealing with ostensibly an independent studio of his own making or whatever. Yes.
Right.
Apples and oranges to some degree, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Yes, to some degree, absolutely. But to another degree, apples to apples in many ways. No, considering all of that, not just keeping it in the MCU or the DCU, it made me start thinking about superhero movies overall and what they do right, what they do wrong, where they've peaked and valleyed and all that stuff. And the question that I posed to you, and I might not have narrowed it down enough for you either, because in my head it was narrowed down already. I wanted to know what you thought was the best superhero movie that had come out since the MCU started. So basically since Iron Man 1.
I have the text right here. Do you want it?
Yeah, I don't remember what I said. Yeah. If
you said, quote, "Hey, something I want to discuss briefly is opinion on the quote unquote best superhero movie since DCEU/MCU started. I've been thinking hard about it and think I've come to a conclusion. Doesn't have to be part of those groups, superhero flicks overall."
Right.
So that's the assumption I was working on.
Okay. Yeah. So perfect. So it was, and I mentioned that
Because we didn't talk about it after that. I just said, okay.
It didn't have to be, and I wanted to be clear that DCU, MCU were not the only things. There's Sony's made some movies. You've got Netflix has made a couple movies that are comic related. But I was curious what you found when you thought about that question. What was the superhero movie that to you is truly the elevated like what is the one that if you got to
elevated say, right, good way to bring it back, yeah,
the elevated superhero movie, what's the movie that when you go when you think, man, that was a superhero movie, that was the comic book movie for me, like that's the best one, like that's the what did you find, what did you
so I don't have surprisingly a simple or quick answer, as you might imagine.
No, I do. I have a very quick simple answer.
And I'm looking forward to it. My journey began with Wikipedia, as it often does.
As it should.
Where if you look up superhero movie, it gives you a live action list that, of course, begins in 1977 with, say it with me, Abbar, the first black Superman.
Abbar, the first, yeah.
And ends with 2008's highest grossing, by way of Wikipedia, superhero movie
Mystery
in Hancock.
Oh,
of course. So then you realize there's not a Marvel or DC property on this entire thing, and that they don't count comic book movies as superhero movies, or that they've given them their own page at this point. So when I went to the comic book page, which, by the way, if I had stuck with the other list, it might have been RoboCop. I think might have been my answer there.
Can't go wrong with it, honestly.
So I went to comic book movies, and I would say Endgame, but that's an obvious cop out because it's nothing with everything that came before it. You know, that's a culmination. I disqualified it almost immediately after saying that, but
okay, that's fair.
If I didn't have to, that does something that no other movie has done. Maybe not of its own accord, again, because of so much that came before it. I still think it's good, stands on its own, but I didn't think it was appropriate for the conversation.
Sure.
So then I keep going through the list, and I have recently watched the Nolan Batman trilogy. I showed it to Evelyn.
Cool.
In fact, funny question, when we were watching Justice League, she's like, why didn't they have Bruce Wayne in this movie? And I was like, well, that's what Ben Affleck, this guy, that's what he was doing. She's like, no. Why didn't they have Bruce Wayne, though, from like the Batman movie? And I'm like, oh, she's talking about.
And then you put on Adam West, and you went, we don't know. We've been asking for years.
And I was like, well,
he died.
So that was fun. I would still choose Dark Knight between all those. And I know that's certainly the elevated,
sure.
comic book movie answer that you'll probably get most of all. I still don't think I would choose that.
Fair, yeah.
Because maybe retroactively, seeing Nolan's movies and kind of, in the moment, in after having seen Dark Knight for the first time, I would have unequivocally said Dark Knight.
Sure.
But at this point, now knowing Nolan and knowing those other movies and what, the whole MCU having happened, it's actually not even in maybe my top 10. It's just a different thing. It's like
it's
weird.
It's dotted line, like in a way, like it's Batman for sure, but it's very much its own thing that has. Yeah, I'm with you though.
Like on the Wikipedia list of comic book movies, I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't show up. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, it's probably up there in the top 5.
But then I keep going down the list, and it has movies like Shazam, which if this was experience alone, it's Shazam.
Yeah,
it's absolutely Shazam.
Probably.
I came to Colorado. We watched it together. We've talked about this before. Then, and this is where I'll get back to a little bit of what you were talking about, how all the Marvel movies are a little bit samey.
Yeah.
Which I disagree, but I disagree in the way that when I was growing up and anybody heard the type of music I listened to, which was largely punk rock and largely fast punk rock, because I wasn't, anytime somebody released an album with a slow punk rock song on it, I just didn't listen to that song. I just listened to all the other ones. I would say it's samey in the way that anybody who heard all of, a completely different song in that genre from completely different bands and said, well, it sounds the same. And I can't even tell. Like, it just sounds loud. It sounds like a guitar. And I have no idea what the notes are. Like, I would disagree that every Marvel movie is the same in the way that I would disagree those two songs are the same, which
that's fair.
I believe your argument, and there is an argument certainly for the homogeneity of comic book movies.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But when I get to movies like Ragnarok on this list, and I'm like, oh shoot, now I know why this is hard.
And Ragnarok is one that it does not fall into the samey thing, because it is...
Well, because at some point, Marvel movies in particular were like, a comic book movie became the platform in a way, not the genre. You know,
sure,
and we now like Winter Soldier was a spy thriller. Ant-Man was a heist movie. Like, these aren't comic book movies anymore, really.
Sure.
You know, like, first and foremost. So I'm like, well, now it's getting hard to figure that out. And now I'm like, well, that's why Donner's Superman was so far ahead of its time. You know, so I start thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And then I think about Superman 4, and it's easy to kind of forget about.
Quest for peace of mind.
And then The Rocketeer, Constantine, Monkey Bone. Like, I haven't even seen the New Mutants yet, so this isn't even an informed decision if you think about it, Matt. And I think I'm left with Spider-Man Homecoming, and then I'm like, wait, Spider-Verse is better, so maybe Spider-Verse, but then Iron Man 3, which is another kind of, it's the Shane Black genre inside of, the comic book movie platform. But then also the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was a comic book movie.
Sure.
And like, if it was on a scale of movies that shouldn't have been as good as they were, that probably wins hands down.
Yeah, that's pretty
and
good.
That's where I'm at. I don't necessarily know. Maybe Spider-Verse, maybe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles if nostalgia is taking over to some extent.
Sure.
And I could go on forever about either of those. Is that enough of an answer?
Yeah. That's fine. So I did a similar thing where I ended up going through all the like I pulled up the list and I started going through stuff, and I hit things like, similar notes where I found things like Dredd, right? That's
the Stallone.
Yes, obviously.
Okay. Sorry.
But like Dredd is one of those that's a perfect adaptation of that character. 110%.
The double whammy.
Yeah, it's Carl Urban and cool. It's Dredd is Carl Urban in The Raid. Okay, that's what that is, and it's awesome.
Wow, that's very accurate.
Yeah. But there are, all the movies that you mentioned. I had to go back to Ragnarok, and I thought about that, and I thought about Ant-Man and the things that I liked about that. But
you like Ant-Man better than I do.
I do. I love Ant-Man. And Ant-Man 2, actually just finished it the other night. Love that more the second time around, or third or fourth time, whatever it was. Really like that movie again. Now that I've I don't know what the deal was. Where I was. Thought about Deadpool and how Deadpool 2 was.
I didn't even think about Deadpool.
Incredible adaptation of that character. Maybe overall the best adaptation of a character from for a movie. The one that came in, I could tell you, the one that came in second place for me that I really had to fight against, and this one landed where it did because, much like you noted, because it's a comic book movie because it's based on a comic book, but it's not a comic book movie, is Logan. Like, that movie is, holy crap.
We need to have that discussion. We need to have the in fact, I like how little we're mentioning the X-Men movies or that, Fox universe or whatever, but we're saving it for the show.
We do.
Maybe,
and you know what? We can get there. I can commit to it. But
fine.
what it comes down to, when it came down to what I was thinking about, barring everything, like I didn't put limitations on myself outside of Iron Man. It had to be from Iron Man on, right? Because we're at a point where things like Endgame or heavy CGI favor allows us to go into the most comic book thing in the world, how the characters move, what they can do, all of this. Absolutely nothing is out of bounds anymore. Like, it's all doable in some way. So it comes down to things like the characters, the story, what's under the story, what's the actual message there? What are we getting across? Who's doing it? What does the action look like? Are the characters recognizable if they're recognizable, supposed to be, cinematography? How are they shooting the movie? What's going on behind that? And it all culminated to one movie. And right now, to me, when I have to give an example of, tell me what your superhero movie, what's the perfect superhero movie is. And I do think from the acting, the look, the style, the story, the message behind it, everything from top to bottom, the music, the sound, the actual soundtrack itself, nothing in this movie there's nothing missing. It
Gross Point Blank.
It hits every single. That's it. It's Gross Point Blank. But it hits every requirement that I could come up with, like, and exceeds them. And it's absolutely, you mentioned it, it's Into the Spider-Verse. That is the best comic book movie that exists today. While I absolutely can see what you're saying when it comes to Endgame or the Infinity War overall and how it builds, and that movie did something nothing else did. Yeah, because it brought everybody together, which was amazing. But that to me is where that movie is not. It doesn't reach what I want it to reach, because the thing that was amazing about Infinity War and Endgame wasn't necessarily the movie itself. It was the fact that the movies were fan service. The movies. It was we were able to take 22 films or 20 movies, get every actor that had ever been in them and put them in one movie, and then give you that one sequence at the end of each where you had the ultimate battles. And those are amazing. They're super cool.
But I'm not even thinking of the story when I say that. I'm not thinking of the time travel stuff or what actually happens. I don't even know if I could tell you that much. Like, I'm thinking about, this moment or this moment, which I'm not going to say because I'm a nice guy, but spoiler.
But when I think about Spider-Verse, you've got a variety of characters. You've got Miles' story that can hit home for everybody. You've got the Gwen stuff. You've got the interesting characters. You've got the purpose behind Dr. Octavius and Kingpin having interesting moral questions behind what they're doing.
Catherine Hahn.
Again,
as Octavia, I totally forgot.
It deals with family. It deals with friendship. It deals with loneliness. It deals with coming to grips with who you are, what you can do, what you can't do, learning all this stuff better than any other comic book movie that's out there. And that's my very strong opinion on it. Can it be swayed? Sure. I'm open to a discussion about, give me another movie that hits every note and also doesn't talk down to anybody, doesn't require any back knowledge. You don't have to know anything about any of those other characters because they give you everything for that movie. Anything else, super novel that you get to, if you come in with some back knowledge, yeah, cool, you're going to get payoff there, but you don't need it.
Again, you're talking about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, but
Secret of the Ooze.
Discussion for another time.
Pepperoni heaven.
I love being a turtle. I can't disagree. I'm glad that in my nebulous little Cloud O movie answer there that I at least got close to yours, because I agree with everything you said. So,
woohoo! Hey, look at us. We did it. Snydercut 4 hours. Our podcast just 2.
So if you enjoyed any of that, you can come back next week when we do something similarly completely different. So we are Book Club for Movies at podcast at bookclubformovies.com. If you don't have thoughts on the Snydercut, who are you?
What are you even doing?
Find us on the internet and let us know what they are, and I'm sure it will come up again. So
Snydercut. Hey. Whoa, Snyder cut.
See you next week.
Bye.